more words about consciousness, and I will leave the rest of it undone because I can't really do all the training teaching you.
Pilot, avoid any fluid server may cause heavy damage.
To understand how it is told me my mother's arm is
Salvo core
I
ready.
mean, that's an interesting question about how he does that.
Salvo core detecting all damage.
Once you've made your mind one point of view, right, now here's the way you work. You get your mind calmer and calmer. First, the mind is like a waterfall. The mind is going all the way up like a wild it's like a monkey
Battery essential.
that is moving to begin with, that you fed wine to, so it's drunk in addition, and it's just been bitten by a scorpion. That was Vivekananda's way of creating what the mind is like. You know, it's just jumping from thing to thing. I got an itch. I hear your word. I'm thinking about this. Gee, I wonder. Gee, it's dark. You know, like the seats are hard. I gotta go to the bathroom. You know, like 10,000 things, and they just like, oh, flip. It's called free association. Okay, there it all is. That's the drunken monkey. So pretty soon, what you do, those are called the vrittis and the chitta. I won't get you into the terminology tonight because that's too much. It sounds like double speak. What you do slowly is you calm down these waves until pretty soon it's just like a very fast-moving river.
Replacement battery required.
And the way you do that is by getting into the witness and watching it all happen. That's one way of doing it. And pretty soon, as you're watching it all happen, it starts to happen less and less because you're not lost in it as much. And you sort of cease to let your mind, you've just watched it, and it sort of becomes embarrassed. It's very funny. It's like your ego gets embarrassed under the scrutiny. And then, finally, it gets just like an ocean. Your mind is perfectly calm. Now, when you work on becoming one-pointed in your thinking, say you're doing tratta, which is a technique of working with the camera. This is one of the arms of yoga, which is Pratyahara. You look at an external object. Now, most people, when they look at a candle flame, they sit down, and the candle flame should be up here. It should be right above where your ajna is, the sixth chakra. You look at the candle flame, and you try to make something happen. Well, already you've lost. The game is you put the candle there, and you are here, and that's it. That's all you got to do. You just sit here, and there's you and the candle. You don't look at the candle, you just be here, and there's the candle being there. It's doing this thing, you're doing it. And just sit there with the candle, and pretty soon all your thoughts are all around here. They're like little bugs flying in and around the candle flame. Just the candle, and I can look at the candle, and I can see your glasses, I can see your shirt, your dress, see all that. I can get the door opening, and I can hear myself talking, and see my hands moving, and feel my muscles. And it's just me and the candle. It's my witness, and the candle is the witness. And the rest of it's just all happening around me. And as I do this, after a while, pretty soon all this quiets down, and I cease to be overwhelmed by all my senses until pretty soon there's just the candle and me. I didn't do anything. I didn't try to do anything. It just happened. And then if I keep doing that, pretty soon I am just there with the candle. Now that's one-pointedness of mind, all right? You've calmed down, you're able to think of one thing. Now, the next part of that, of the next leg, is called dharana, which means doing the same thing on something inside. Like you take ajna, you take this point where these three nerves meet up here. And instead of looking at the candle, you close your eyes and you focus on that place right behind your brow, right in there. And again, you just be there. And pretty soon that's where you are. That's all you are, is just a point of consciousness right there. That's it. Not a body, there's nothing. It's just a point of consciousness. Now, when you have succeeded in doing that, you are nearly home. Then you hold it longer and longer, and it's called dhyana, and you hold it longer and longer, and you go into samadhi. Now, as you go, there are different levels of samadhi, which is this state where you flip over and you just that place. That's all. You've given up everything else. You're still in form. You're still being a candle. At that point, you can perform a thing called samyama. Because at that point, you see, you have freed your consciousness from your body. In other words, you have overridden that veil of ignorance which had convinced you all those years that you, which is your pure consciousness, and that body and mind were one and the same thing. And by going down to that one place and then going behind, right back in there, you get to a place where you're just pure consciousness. And then, if you are in the candle plane, that's where you are. And samyama is the quality of getting outside of the ego-centered predicament. So that when you perform samyama on something, like another person's mind, you are their mind. Literally, I'm not putting you on. It's not mind reading. You are there. That's where you are, because you're not here, sir. Because you left your body. You have merged your consciousness. Here's what's happened. You have purified and purified. You've separated your consciousness from the gross energy body, from the finer energy thought. You get it down to this finest energy, which is what it's been all along, which is called Atman, or Brahma, or Prakriti, rather. And then it merges and it becomes the entire place. It's the entire universe. It merges into everything because it's all interchangeable at that level. It's all interchangeable. You see, energy at that level is all interchangeable. And that's all you are, so you're part of it all. That's what the Hindi means when they say, the place is in Samadhi, you go to Sat Chit Ananda. That means absolute existence. It doesn't mean you exist, it means you are existence. Absolute knowledge. It doesn't mean you know, it means you are knowledge. Ananda, bliss, doesn't mean you feel bliss, it means you are bliss. You go to that place where you are it all. And you reside in that place where you are it all in the formless state. And then when there is the requirement for you to come down into some form or bring back something, you merely can go into that form to bring it back. In other words, in that place that he goes to, which I'm going to recite a little poem in a second about, that place he goes to, in Sat Chit Ananda, there is no time. Past, present, future, it's all part of the warp and warp of nature. It's all nature's out there. He's part of nature, he's merged in it, it's all part of the same thing. From this other point of view, it's all there. He's both there and he's part of it. And therefore, since he's beyond time, he can be anything in any time. So he is actually my mother's swollen belly 9 months previously in Boston, Massachusetts, because there is the requirement of my rational mind to be overridden at that point. And that's the thing that is the vehicle he uses, which is the essence vehicle to deal with the emotional love I have with my mother and the feeling of the spiritual link I have with her, and he works the whole thing out like that. Ramana Maharshi was 17 years old. He was sitting in his uncle's study. He was a high school student. He wasn't even a religious high school student. And the kid feels he's going to die. And instead of calling somebody, he lies down and he feels himself die and be taken to the burning gut and burned, and he goes through the whole trip. And then he says, well, just like I said, who's minding the shop? The same experience. It's the same experience. Except the difference between me and Ramana Maharshi was a little difference in sanskaras, because he never came down. See, he was a fully enlightened being at that moment. He stayed that way forever. And so what happened was, 2 weeks later, he split from home and he went off to Arunachala, the holy mountain in southern India, climbed up there and he meditated for the rest of his life. And people came by the thousands to visit Ramana Maharshi. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scene. And wise pundits would come from around India, and they would ask him these technical questions about specific bits of knowledge from philosophy and from, very esoteric books, and he would give them answer in chapter and verse, though he had never read anything. the same way in which my teacher knows 8 languages. 8 is all I've ever seen demonstrated. I assume he knows all languages. He must be all languages. Just like my guru could talk to me in English if he chose to. And he talks to me through my heart because he doesn't have to talk to me. And when I went to Delhi from the mountains in March, and I went by bus on 14-hour trip to Delhi, and I went to American Express and BOAC and all that, and then in the afternoon I was hungry, so I went into a vegetarian restaurant, and I had a meal, and at the end of the meal I had been like living very frugally, so I had ice cream, and they had 2 biscuits for the ice cream. Boy, I savored those biscuits. They were the first, like sweet thing I'd had like that. And then I went to the Buddhist monastery I was staying at that night, and the next day I got on the bus, drove 14 hours back to the temple. The guru had been up in the mountains. I hadn't seen him for
Major Anderson went this
all
way.
over a month.
It could be a shortcut.
A few days later, I hear the guru is back, and we all, you get on the bus and everybody's rushing to the guru because it's that feeling of love. You just want to see the guy, which is more or less relevant. And I get there and I fall, Danda Pranam, and I'm down there, and he grabs my hair and he pulls my head back and he looks at me and he says, "How'd you like the biscuits?" Now, you dig that where his consciousness is not only with me in the biscuits, not only with me right here speaking to you, and I mean that literally. You see, I don't know what literal means, but I think I mean literal. I don't know what a literal means gross senses, but if it doesn't, I mean it literally.
Watch our step.
He's not only there, but he's every other place at the same time. Like at the same moment he's digging me eating the biscuits, or, he could be with his 10,000 other devotees wherever they happen to be, because there's no requirement that you have to be only in one place at one time. When you merge with it all, you are it all. You are it all. And we Westerners just can't conceive of what that means, because we're so caught in the finite conception of the way it all works, of our consciousness. Ram Tirath, who was a very, very beautiful Indian saint, very high being. He came to the United States in 1906, something like that, I think. And then around 24 or 5, when he was about 25, he walked into the Ganga and just kept walking and just finished his incarnation. But he wrote a few lines that are, see, a person like that wrote from inside. So what you're hearing is somebody living in this place. This is the way he described the place he's living in. I am without form, without limit. I am beyond space, beyond time. I am in everything. Everything is in me. I am the bliss of the universe. Everywhere am I. I am existence absolute, knowledge absolute, bliss absolute. I am that. And then he also just said these 2 little lines. I have no scruple of change, nor fear of death. I was never born, nor had I parents, nor had I parents. While we could go on many hours, and I will be happy to talk informally through the evening. I feel that many of you have probably gotten to satiation. So I'm just going to end with this very beautiful thing. It's very strange. It was found on a 16th century Norman crucifix. I am the great sun but you do not see me. I am your husband, but you turn away. I am the captive, but you do not free me. I am the captain, whom you will not obey. I am the truth, but you do not believe me. I am that city where you will not stay. I am your wife, your child, but you will leave me. I am that God to whom you will not pray. I am your counsel, but you do not hear me. I am your lover, whom you will slay. I am the victor, but you do not cheer me. I am the holy dove that you will slay. I am your life, but if you will not name me, seal up your soul with tears and never name me. Traditional greeting and parting in India is Namaste, which means I bless that which is the Atman in you. Therefore, Namaste.
Well, when we look at where we are in this little adventure we're having together, which we started out yesterday closing our eyes and raising our hands to signify to ourselves, and then we're being aware of who we are, the sense of a process going on, of an awakening process, of a changing process going on in our lives. And then we started to talk about what you do with that process, or how you are, and all the different stages you might meet. And I took you through the stages of renunciation and then engagement with the material psychological world, because when you push it away, you go into the horny celibate syndrome, you end up going into the aversion place, so you enter into being in the world but not of the world. You enter into the place where there is form and formlessness, and they're both there, and you have form and you have no form at the same moment. And those paradoxes are part of what is required to embrace. And in the afternoon, in the small groups, you've got a chance to explore where you were getting caught and how you were working with it, which is just that edge of getting too much into the stuff. And then how do you do it to free yourself? But throughout it, we've been talking about balance, that the game is not to push away the world, the game is not to get caught in it. The game is to, as Christ said, be in the world but not of the world, to be simultaneously empty and full, to be somebody and nobody. It's all these paradoxes you have to embrace. There's nothing to do, so get on with it. It's all those paradoxes. It's one after another after another. And they seem like paradoxes because they seem on a horizontal plane. They seem like what the paradox technically means are two thoughts that are incompatible. But really what we're talking about are planes of consciousness in which what's on channel 4 isn't compatible with what's on channel 7. And so how do you, and yet they're both true, or relatively true. So how do you expand to embrace paradox rather than to demand that it be logical? How do you open to that expanded awareness of living with the paradoxes in yourself? It's like we're all one, but it's my television set. See, there are two places that are, it's hard, you know, if we're all one, it's not my television set, it's our television set. And you need it, well, there goes my television set. But we've got to learn how to figure that out and how to work with boundaries and without boundaries and how to do it without locking ourselves up in guilt or insecurity or indecision or whatever. And allow the paradox that what we tend to do is when something bad happens in the world, we tend to externalize it and push it away, all the way from a toothache, where it was my tooth until it started to hurt, and then it was that tooth. As if it's no longer me, it's that tooth. And the same way as this whole country does with Saddam Hussein or on and on and on. It's always externalizing evil in order not to realize that it's all inside us. There's no them, there's just us. It's just us. You can't really polarize it and push it away that way. It's too cheap a way out. A mature person embraces the whole business into oneself. And all of our practices that we've done in the past couple of days, sitting, concentrating through sitting, and then concentrating through the walking meditation, those were to quiet the mind and to help you get free of the thoughts that are full of attraction and aversion, and seeing the pattern of that stuff in yourself so you can get really quiet inside and meet the part of you that is behind all of the identification with thoughts and sensations. And then Jai led us in kirtan, in singing, in a way of devotionally starting to relate to the beloved, the spiritual form as the beloved, so in a way of opening the heart. And you can think of these as two really initially separate practices. Ultimately, they're one practice, but at the higher level, but otherwise one is quieting the mind, one's opening the heart. And you could say, I've got these balances to get in my spiritual world. I've got to quiet my mind, I've got to open my heart, get my energies moving freely in my body, honor my body. And as you look at how to use the fact that you've taken an incarnation, that you're in a human form, what does that mean? If it's not an error, it is your curriculum for getting enlightened. That each of us has a unique curriculum. Look around, you'll see everybody looks unique. And therefore everybody's projecting out a different thing, so everybody's meeting a different universe. Your mind and your body are both sending out information all the time and interpreting information. Like, what do you see when you look up here? Well, it depends on your motivation, because motivation affects perception. If you're busy being bald, you see me as somebody with a lot of hair. If you're busy being a woman, you see me as a man. If you're busy being, whatever. If you're busy being a person of color, you see me as Caucasian. In a way, whatever your investment is determines what the universe looks like to you. So we all live in the universe of our own projective systems. That doesn't mean there isn't stuff out here. But it says in the Tao, truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. When you want something, you see only the projection of your wants. You see only the outward container. If you're very attached to color, you see the color of my sweater. So when we meet each other, what we see, in a funny way, is what we are. And as you free your awareness from those identifications with desire, with attachment, with judgment, with all the conceptual stuff, so you're just back in here, then you can start to see, is there a universe out there? And if so, what is it like? It's like regaining innocence. As you look at a baby looking around, if you could get inside the baby looking around, before it has conceptual models, it doesn't know, hey, this is mother, this is a breast. It starts out on an instinctual basis without much consciousness. If you put something near its lips and it starts to suck. But at first it's just light and shadow and all that. It's not mother or wed or all, and then it slowly develops a conceptual model. Once you've developed it, it's hard to get rid of it. It's hard not to see that person as mother. It's not hard not to see each thing as this is me. And you never regain the innocence of just seeing patterns of light and dark and shadow and energy fields and all the other things that occur when you're not busy immediately hiding, well, not hiding, but in the conceptual spirit conspiracy we all have to see the universe a certain way. Now, in your folder that we gave you, you have a very beautiful picture of a woman. Her name is Ananda Mayi Ma. And Ananda Mayi Ma was an extraordinary being. She had millions and millions of devotees in India. People that just loved to be in her presence. And she grew up and married and all of these things. And then slowly her spiritual identity kept emerging more and more. And then people started to be around her and feel her resonating with a deeper truth in their own being. And it just opened their hearts and they came to love her very dearly. And this is when she was a young girl, still going through that transformation process. And she lived on until for another 50 years or so. And she was just very deeply loved. And I want to read to you 2 quotes from her because you and I are, what we're talking about this morning is perspective, is how you work with perspective. This is a practice now, how you work with perspective to be able to handle life and do it so it's useful spiritually. So she said, and this is concerning her practice, which was very devotional, of seeing the beloved everywhere and serving the beloved everywhere. That was her practice. It was a devotional practice. Even though who she was, as you will see, is beyond practice. To the extent she was informed, she did practice. In other words, you can do practice to get somewhere, and then when you're there, you do the practice to celebrate being there. You don't do it out of need, you do it out of celebratory joy. So this is the first quote. She said, pointing to her own body, she said, "This body has lived with father, mother, husband, and all. This body has served the husband, so you may call it a wife. It has prepared dishes for all, so you may call it a cook. It has done all sorts of scrubbing and menial work, so you may call it a servant. But if you look at the thing from another standpoint, you will realize that this body has served none but God. For when I served my father, mother, husband, and others, I simply considered them as different manifestations of the Almighty and served them as such. When I sat down to prepare food, I did so as if it were a ritual. For the food cooked was, after all, meant as an offering to God. Whatever I did in a spirit of divine service. Hence, I was not quite worldly, though always engaged in household affairs. I had but one ideal: to serve all as God, to do everything for the sake of God. This pure method, it's like Mother Teresa picking up the lepers in the streets of Calcutta. And when they say, how can you do this and how courageous, she looks confused and she says, I am caring for my beloved Christ in all his distressing disguises. Now, if you met your beloved on the street lying there, even in its own vomit and urine and all, what joy to be able to take care of it. Instead of, aren't I good? I'm a Mother Teresa taking care of that poor leper. It's a form of making love. When you take care of your beloved, it's a form of making love. So there's a perspective about what you do every day. Now let me take you out into another part of her mind where you will get another level of the perspective, which is very important for what we do next. You all right thus far? At one point, Paramahansa Yogananda, who was also a very beautiful, high spiritual being, he wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi that many of you, I'm sure, have been fed by along the way. Once Paramahansa Yogananda asked Anandamayi Ma to tell him something of her life. Father, there is little to tell. My consciousness has never associated itself with this temporary body. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but still, I was the same. When the family in which I had been born made arrangements to have this body married, I was the same. And Father, in front of you now, I am the same. Even afterwards, though the dance of creation changes around me in the hall of eternity, I shall be the same. Now, just play with that for a moment. Start to find in yourself the place that is the same in the midst of changing phenomena. Like, I'm sad. Are you also the same? I'm happy. Are you also the same? I'm getting old. Are you also the same? In other words, keep looking for what is the same, because you focus so much on what's different all the time. Now I'm happy, now I'm sad, now I'm young, now I'm old, now I'm hungry, now I'm full, now I'm horny, now I'm lazy, etc., etc. Behind it all, are you the same? See, the same is the quietness in you that doesn't get much notice because you're so fascinated by the individual differences inside yourself and the way you're always changing. The changing panorama is like the seduction of nature constantly saying, come, revel in all the differences, enjoy them. And that's what romantic poetry is about, reveling in the differences. Take this quote from the Prajnaparamita, Tibetan text. All this fleeting world all this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of light in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a dream. Can you get out that far? Could you see this all as a dreamscape? Didn't you dream last night or the night before that? And when you were in it, didn't it seem real? Then remember you woke up, you try to remember it, and maybe you started to lose it, and you thought, boy, that was an interesting dream. Wow, I was really scared, or I was really excited, or that was fascinating. And you said, oh my God, it was only a dream. Now imagine waking up from this one. I mean, in the dreams, didn't time seem like there was a lot of time involved in some of those dreams? And didn't everybody's body seem real? Remember the dream where we were all sitting in a hall, being spiritual seekers together? Remember that? Didn't it seem real? Remember everybody? I mean, I can almost remember the word. Didn't I meet you in a dream? To touch these perspectives, the perspective of the source that Anandamayi Ma is talking about I was always the same, I am always the same, I am just the awareness that is the same. It embraces everything and all the changes are going on within it, but it's the same. Nothing's happening here. That has such a quietness to it, such an equanimity. And the question, I'll give you one more quote and then we'll work. This one is from the Tao Te Ching, translation by a fellow that's doing work now, Stephen Mitchell, who's quite talented. He said, the Tao says, when you realize where you come from, meaning that source place where nothing's going on, that formless out of which the form runs, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother, dignified as a king, immersed in the wonder of Tao, the wonder of the way, the miracle of it all. You can deal with whatever life brings you. And when death comes, you are ready. I see our situation at the moment. I can see it 1,000 different ways, but I'll share one way of seeing it. Yesterday I talked about taking care of my father, and many people came up and said, thank you for saying that. Either I'm taking care of my father or my mother, or I did do it, or I'm going to have to do it, or I want to do it, or I do get off on it, or I hate it, or whatever. I mean, there were a lot of comments. Besides being members of family, we as incarnates have other identities as well. And we have to honor all of those in order to be free. As long as you're pushing away any part of your incarnation, it's got you, as we said yesterday. If you push away the total incarnation, it's got you totally. If you push away part of it, those parts still have you. If you either grab at a part of it to define yourself that way, or push away by defining yourself as not that. Like people say, I can't stand living in cities, I get high living in the country. See what they're doing? Hear the web of aversion and attraction? Would you give me a spiritual practice? Sure, go live in the city. I mean, you want to get free or just screw around? It's up to you. Yeah. And for a lot of people, the idea of being a participant in the social institutions other than family that are concerned with the common good, like the government, is abhorrent. Because you look and you say, oh, politicians are look, and I can't be, and I'm not going to participate in it, and it's so big and I'm so little, and it doesn't make any difference anyway. And when I found out that a congressperson, member of the House or Senate, interprets any letter that they receive as representing 17,000 of their constituents, I thought, boy, I write 2 letters, that's 34,000 people. What sense of power? It's incredible. So I've been writing letters. Because I recognize, as I said yesterday in response to the question about politics, that I am a member of the family of the nation state, just as I am a member of the family of the world. So when I work in Guatemala with SEVA or in Nepal, and what SEVA does is it's recognizing the extended family, that there are Guatemalans that are us and there are Nepalis that are us.